Greetings, fellow Americans. You know, during the steamy summer months, especially around certain high holidays, we the people tend to congregate outdoors, quaffing copious amounts of sudsy beer stuffs and incinerating meaty masses over the oxidizing remains of carbonized hardwood, often referred to as barbecues. Cookouts, grill-outs, and or picnics, such events often succeed or fail, not on the virtues of their carnivorous main course, but upon the quality of their side dishes. Having attended more than my fair share of al fresco feasty fetes over the decades, I fear, fellow Americans, that I must tell you, our side game is losing its luster. And so, today, I offer takes on my holy trinity: the coleslaw, the baked beans, the potato salad. Now, those who contemplate the history of the American plate might appreciate the symmetry here, as these dishes represent an old world food, cabbage, a new world food, the beans of the Phaceolus vulgaris species, which include pinto beans, great northern beans, kidney beans, navy beans, that kind of thing, and potatoes, new world food, taken to the old world around 1560, probably, where it was cultivated into kind of a different crop and then returned to North America in the pockets of multiple immigrant groups, including the Germans, who made it into something that we know today as potato salad. The bean, the cabbage, the potato were honestly the great survival foods, the great storage foods that allowed America to become American. Gosh darn it. Now, just to keep things tidy, we're going to go in chronological order today, as I think of slaw as 17th century, baked beans as 18th century, and potato salad as 19th century. Enough talk, we cook! Behold, Brassica oleracea, variety capitata. Now, you may just see a common cabbage, but for the Dutch of the colonial era, this was nearly as powerful as the cannonball it so closely resembles. Now, our common cabbage descends from the Dutch white cabbage, which was isolated and cultivated from other cabbages to thrive in the cold, moist environment of the Netherlands. Its tightly packed composition resists rotting, thus enabling long storage. It ripens in winter when other fresh crops are hard to come by, and it is packed with vitamin C, and thus an important seagoing item, as it can prevent scurvy. Actually, more vitamin C in here than in here. It can also be made into sauerkraut, but that's another show. Now, we know, this is nice, by 1667, the Dutch were making fresh cabbage salads. We know this because the, I'm going to try to say this, der Verstandige Koch, the Verstandige Koch, tells us so. That's the first Dutch cookbook, translates to the sensible cook. Now, such salads, or coleslaws, became our coleslaw of the day. Only they were strictly vinegar dressed, no mayo, and that's how we're gonna roll today. Step one, we're gonna toast some spices. Place half a teaspoon each of cumin seed and red pepper flake in just a small skillet with a teaspoon of whole celery seed. And I use a pestle to just kind of break up those seeds a bit, but you can get creative with this step. Then add a quarter cup of a neutral, high temperature oil. I'm using light olive oil here, and put over medium-low heat. And just cook until the spices become fragrant. It's gonna take a minute, maybe two, but you don't want to burn these, so stay with them. Kill the heat and let them cool. Now, for the rest of the dressing, combine a quarter teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper with a teaspoon of kosher salt in a sealable jar, along with a quarter cup each rice wine vinegar and apple cider vinegar. I'm going to also add a teaspoon of Dijon mustard, smooth Dijon for flavor, and because we need some emulsifiers here, and then 3 tablespoons of plain old granulated sugar. Now, you want to make sure you've got a good lid for your jar. Then grab your spices, which should be cool enough to add at this point. Also has the oil phase. Just pour that right in the jar. But do be careful that it isn't hot, or it'll spurt and splatter and make noise, and you don't want that. Lid up and give a good shake. No, I mean like really shake. Really shake. There you go. Then set aside for 1 hour, please. Meanwhile, we manufacture the slaw itself. We're going to need 3 good-sized carrots, 1 onion, and 1 big cabbage. Now, the carrots, it doesn't have to be an exact amount or weight here, just 3 large. You're going to grate those on the large holes of your box grater, thusly. There you go. Anything beyond that, and you're going to be grating your fingers. All right, I usually scoop everything up with my board scraper. A lot less mess that way. Or actually, it's still really messy. Just get that into a bowl. Just get this up. Excuse me. Right. Now we move on to the onion. Now, I'm always going to cut an onion, split down the middle, making sure that I've got root end on both hemispheres, as it were, holding things together. Kind of use a big knife for this. And then just slice thinly into half moons. There you go. Both sides. We need that. I'm not going to worry about getting them perfect, obviously. Then we contemplate the cabbage itself. This is a nice big cabbage, coming it in at, well, hold on a second, want me to be sure. I'm hoping for 3.5 pounds here. All right, not quite. 3 pounds, 5.7 ounces. That's good enough. I'm gonna call that 3.5 pounds. Now, what I want to do is quarter this, and I'm gonna split it down the stem. That keeps things even. And just use a straight down motion, resting my other hand on the back of the blade carefully. Kind of hard, like cutting a bowling ball. Well, not exactly, but you know what I mean. All right, once you've got the quarters, just kind of sweep in and shave off that hard piece of the stem from each wedge. I don't want that in the slaw. It's not that it tastes bad, but the texture's not what I want. And slice. So when it comes to shredding this into slaw, really, a big knife is the best way to go. But it's not the only way to go. You shut up. What? No, I promised. I promised to never All right, I'm going to show you, but you better promise me you're not ever going to do this. This is where we keep them. The most dangerous tools in the kitchen.
Warning. Stand clear. Stand clear. Stand clear. Stand clear. Stand clear. Stand clear.
I speak, of course, of the Mandolin, aka the Nubbin Factory, aka Das Mitzskinner. And yes, probably it did get its name from the fact that when used very, very quickly from the side, it might possibly resemble playing a mandolin instrument, depending on how you approach it. I've worked around food for a long while, my friends, and although I find these spectacularly useful tools for breaking down a wide array of foodstuffs into darn near perfectly uniform strips, slices, rings, etc., I approach these with considerable respect. Heck, nobody in this place even gets to touch one without signing an insurance waiver and taking a 3-hour first aid course. Odds are the mandolin originated as a simple cabbage board, really just a wooden plank with a fixed blade and a slot over which a farmer or his wife would slide cabbage to make slaw or sauerkraut, very lo-fi. Modern versions like these stem from 2 developments, both fairly recent. A wooden radish slicer invented by a Mr. Yamamoto, 1940 in Japan, and a metal fixed slicer, what we call the mandolin, by one Jean Braun in France, 1946. Now, the French model evolved into a fairly heavy steel device, almost always featuring folding legs and typically sporting quite a few different blades to create complex French cuts. The original manufacturer, the brand Braun Krug, I think it is, they're darn pricey things. They take up a lot of space. They're heavy. I don't even own one, though this OXO version is styled after one. Now, the Japanese versions, best typified by the Ben Renner brand, or Ben Reiner brand, usually high quality, high impact plastic, light, simple blades in a thickness setting, just set by some screws in the back that changes the angle of the slide into the cutting edge. Ben Runner doesn't sound very Japanese, but it is in fact based on the Japanese adjective benri na, I believe. It's told it means handy or useful. I'm a fan of these tools because they're light, they don't take up a lot of space, and they cost a lot less than these. Now, look, if I had to gaufret 50 pounds of potatoes, I might go French, but this guy can more than handle a couple heads of cabbage. Still, do be careful and always use the hand guard. All right? Honestly, you keep this in a locked compartment too if you can, and never ever put this in a washing machine, okay? Hand wash only, but always run your towel or sponge up, not down, or blood in the water you will soon see. Serious about the lockup.
Stand clear.
All right, well, since we're on the subject of the most dangerous tool in the entire kitchen, we might as well use it, right? But you're not going to do this. I'm only showing you this, but I'm a highly insured culinary professional. You're not going to try this. So, I mean, here's the thing. I don't like this many points of control. This bothers me. But the ones that actually come with legs, they're kind of rickety too. I don't like them very much. So here's what I do. Since I'm going to be creating a lot of slaw, I'm going to use a bin, just a plastic bin. You could literally use anything as long as it's clean. Now, of course, the issue is, well, that's not any more stable, is it? It's a piece of wood. It's like a doorstop. You could actually use a doorstop. Now we've got a nice steady platform. I'm always going to work with this thing facing away from me. And this model, you know, it's adjustable, but I've got it set kind of where I always have it set. This should be about a 1/16 of an inch. And it's nice and stable. You're gonna use this. I know, there's some hotshot at home, like, I'm not gonna use the hand guard. You'll either use the hand guard or you'll use these. Maybe the whole box of these. And if it's bad enough, the paramedics will come, and you know what they'll use? They'll use one of these to try to find the piece of your finger that's down there with all that cabbage. This or this. Now, when we take a look at the cabbage, you notice that the teeth on the safety guard, which you're gonna use, really wants to grab hold of something flat. So it's like if we start on the side here, that's gonna be really difficult because it can't get hold of it. So I just kind of stick it right on there, and I'll start on the point of the diagonal here. So I've got my hand supporting here, and it's not gonna move anywhere near the blade, right? I'm holding the back of the handle, and you don't have to push down hard. Just glide through. Nice and simple. Nobody has to get hurt. You'll get hurt if you don't use hand guard. Don't push down hard. If you take care of a decent mandolin, it's gonna stay sharp for a really long time. You take a look, and when you get all the way down to the end, you're gonna be like, I'm just gonna keep going. I'm gonna take up the hand guard and keep going. Okay, so like this part, if you wanna kinda crunch it and fold it up, you can, but I'm not going to. I rather make soup out of it. So let's take a look at what that's giving us. That is a nice, even texture, and I would call that about a 1/16 of an inch. I don't care about the pieces like this that are kind of on the flat. Don't care about that at all. My bin's nice and big. I'm gonna stay calm and continue. Just don't try to get going fast. But above all, don't think, I don't have to use that hand guard. I'm a badass. I'm not like Alton. I'm not a weenie. See all these fingers I still have after all these years? Because I use the hand guard. And again, if you end up with a bunch of little pieces like this and you just want to cut them with a knife, that's perfectly fine. Me, I'm going to make soup. To the sink. All right, to control the texture of our slaw, we want to purge it briefly. So I'm combining all the ingredients. There we go, in this tub. You could do this in a big bowl, doesn't really matter. And then adding some powders, 1/2 cup of granulated sugar and 1/3 of a cup of kosher salt, using diamond crystal here just as a reference. Just stir that in thoroughly. You want to coat every single piece of plant matter. I'm going to leave it for 10 to 15 minutes to draw out as much excess moisture as possible. Yes, we're going to time this. Don't want to go too far. At the end of that time period, we're going to rinse off all of the excess salt and brine, which we formed. Of course, we don't want that there. Now, the reason we're doing this is we want to make sure this liquid comes out now so that it doesn't end up in the slaw later because it'll dilute the dressing. So just a brief rinse, use cold water, and fish out the bad cuts, which shouldn't have gone in there in the first place. And then you can either let this drain, you can dry it on a big towel. I use a salad spinner since I'm already straining with the inside basket. It may take a couple of spins to get as much of the moisture off as you can. It's gonna be a lot of moisture. But of course, we don't have a lot of time here, so we're just gonna show you one. There you go. And always like to put the brake on it. It's going to be a good bit of moisture, as you see. In reality, 3 times, probably. I want it really dry. You see how much moisture was left there, and that's just, that's just one spin. But we're not going to show you more. Anyway, then we move this into a big, heavy-duty zip-top bag. Now, you don't have to do this. I don't really have that much space in my refrigerator, and I find that this takes up, less space than a big bowl. So into the bag. I'm going to spend some time in there marinating with the dressing, which we have here. Let's give that a little shake before pouring it on. And seal the bag, removing as much of the air as possible. That's not really for culinary reasons, it's just for space reasons. There you go. Now, take this time to also give that a good squishing around, a good jostling to make sure you've got good coverage of the dressing. I usually let the slaw age here in the refrigerator for at least an hour before I serve it. And I always put it on a pan just in case there's drippage, although to be honest, there never has been. Boom. And the great thing is I can actually take it to the barbecue or whatever in that bag. This will keep well in here for, I've kept it for up to a week. Actually, that's not true. I ate it all before a week was up, but I'm pretty sure it would be okay. Unlike its chopped up and stirred with mayo cousin, vinegar-based coleslaw provides a bracing foil to fatty summer grilling meats, brisket and sausage, chicken thighs. And because we purged the cabbage with salt and sugar before dressing, we've removed a fair amount of excess water, thus avoiding a watery mess at this point. As far as the cut goes, the actual width of the cabbage, I like mine on the fine side, except I don't know what happened there. You can certainly play with it. Wider would, of course, be a little crunchier. The carrots add sweetness and color, while the onion provides a little bit of backbone, which I like. The cumin, I'm especially fond of in this case. Cover and refrigerate, and you should be able to keep this perfectly sellable for up to a week. Next up. When it comes to dried beans, specifically the dried New World beans, that is Phacelis vulgaris, there are just so many to choose from. I love them all. I love the little cranberry beans and the black beans and the kidney beans. I just really like beans. When it comes to baked beans, I've seen versions made with cannellini beans, aka white kidney beans, and of course the more diminutive navy beans, which most self-respecting Bostonians insist upon for Boston baked beans. But I personally prefer the Great Northern. It's kind of between the size of the cannellini and the navy beans. Unlike the navy, Great Northerns don't tend to turn to mush when cooked and stirred. Sorry, Boston. And unlike cannellinis, they don't have such a tough skin. I think these are best suited for like minestrone or even a puree. In my opinion, we will need a pound of these Great Northerns to do the job, and we're going to need a pot. This fine piece of crockery, actual Boston bean pot. It is, in fact, my wife's Boston bean pot because she's from Boston. And apparently when you're from Boston, they issue you your own Boston bean pot. I'm not from Boston, so I had to borrow one. You'll notice it's a ceramic vessel. This was, and for many still is, the only way to cook authentic Boston baked beans because it's heavy and because it's ceramic, relatively well insulated and very well suited to spending many hours in a relatively low oven. Bean pots don't scorch on the bottom, typically helpful. But that said, my version of this dish requires that I do some cooking on the cooktop first, and I really don't want to have to use two pots. So I'm going to go with a heavy enamel cast iron Dutch oven in the 6-quart range instead. Could you do this in just like a steel pot, like a soup pot or a stock pot? No, I don't think so. You need a Dutch oven. You need something with some real mass to it. And I think enamel cast iron is the way to go. This is, after all, one of the most versatile pieces of cookware that you can own. I've got like 4 of these gosh darn things because we cook with them all the time. And I literally use this for everything from deep frying soups, stews, all manner of casseroles, and definitely beans. Now, I'm not going to espouse a brand here. Just know that you want something that's heavy with a tight fitting lid. And make sure that whatever the handle situation is, it's something that can easily and safely be grasped with a side towel or an oven mitt because it's gonna get hot. And yeah, I know it's got some baked on grime. It's called a patina. I like it. First thing that we need to do is to soak these beans in enough water to cover by 2 inches. I'd let those go for 6 to 8 hours, or overnight would be better. Then going to drain them, but reserve the liquid. You do not want to get rid of that soaking liquid. We're going to need some of that. Why, look, they swole, or they swelled. Swelled? No, I don't know, whatever it is. They're bigger now. Turn your oven to 250 degrees, and I hope for your sake that your oven is easier to set than mine is. I always have a terrible time. I got to jiggle this knob to get to 350. Okay, cut yourself up 1 full pound of smoked bacon. Boston baked beans really should use salt pork, but bacon is a reasonable replacement for today. Go ahead and get that into the pot and crank the heat up to, we'll say medium, and let that rendering out some fat. Meanwhile, cut up a good size onion. I think this is, 280 grams maybe, I don't know. I'm going to cut this radially. You've seen me do this kind of thing before, and then chop across. It does not have to be perfect, and that's a good thing because my onion chopping rarely is perfect. There you go. I'm going to get that into the pot so it can start to sweat down in the bacon fat as it renders. Just get it in there. There you go. Give that a bit of a stir. Just stir it in. That helps to cover up the bad onion cutting. It's an old TV trick. All right, good. We're getting some steam. That's good. Now, jalapenos, 2, relatively large. Don't worry about. They should look kind of like this. Just take off the stem, split them down the middle, and then I remove the seeds and membrane with a grapefruit spoon. I use these things quite a bit. Then cut into strips and cross-cut again. We're going for a rough dice here. Rustic might be the right word to use in this case. There. And then get those into the pot to soften along with the onion. At this point, there should be a good bit of fat coming out of the bacon. There we go. And of course, we need some more stirring. More stirring, and before we introduce more ingredients. There we go. All right. Let that go for 5 minutes and then add more ingredients. In this case, 1/3 cup of molasses. This is very sticky, very, very flavorful stuff. We'll talk more about molasses later. 1/4 cup of tomato paste, not sauce, tomato paste only, please. And 1/4 cup of dark brown sugar. Now, technically, we could use white sugar and just add more molasses, but this is the way I've written the recipe, so let's just go with it. I don't want to do the math. Also adding a teaspoon of black pepper, 2 teaspoons of kosher salt going in, and I've got 1/2 teaspoon of liquid smoke and 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne going in, and then a teaspoon of Urfa Biber. It's a Turkish chili, smoky, raisiny, mysterious. I like it a lot. Secret ingredient in a lot of my stews and braises. Now the beans can be brought to the party, finally, soaked, plump, nice. And the final liquids. I like to split this in half. I'm going to use 2 cups of the reserved liquid, soaking liquid, and 2 cups of chicken stock. You could use broth or you could use vegetable broth, whatever. Set the heat to medium and give a stir. And wait until everything comes up to a simmer. Not quite a boil. We don't need a boil. There you go. And kill the heat. And lid up and into the oven. And the oven is really dirty. You should clean that thing sometime. Right into the middle of the oven and let that go for 3 solid hours before giving it a stir. It's only half of the cooking time. Here, 3 hours. We'll give this a look, but you'll see that they're definitely not done. Although hopefully they're coming along nicely. And yeah, they're not done, but there's some really nice aromas going on here. Just give everything a stir because this show seems to be about stirring at this point. There, you can see the beans on the bottom were wider, not as brown. And back into the oven for another 3 hours. We gotta get these beans out. Okay, good boy. Sit, stay, good dog. All right, just wait, you'll get some. All right, time to evacuate. And yes, the dog's mysteriously gone. It's because we shot this at a different time. You ever try to do continuity with a dog? It's nearly impossible. And by the way, the dog's not getting any of this because it's got onion. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's what we want to see. Now, because we use the Great Northern beans, the beans haven't blown apart. They haven't broken. They're going to hold their shape, which I really like about this. Give that a taste. Oh my God, that's hot. That's really. Let these cool to room temperature, which will take several hours before refrigerating or serving. Hey, there he is. This is the dog's back. It's just like some magic. Delicious. Spice. Nourishing. And a classic accompaniment to a wide array of outdoor summer fare, right? But we need to ask, or I do, Boston. How did molasses get into a classic Boston dish? Well, because in 1770, there were some 160 rum distilleries in New England. Why so many? Because by the time of the American Revolution, the average colonist was drinking 3.7 gallons of rum a year, including the clergy, little old ladies, and most children. This is not authentic. And rum is made of molasses. And back then, molasses came from the sugarcane plantations of the West Indies, where enslaved people did the brutal work of planting, cutting, crushing, and boiling cane. After the precious sucrose crystals were removed, what remained was a dark syrup, too loaded with minerals to crystallize. Molasses. New England merchants imported it in mass quantities, fermented it, distilled it into rum. But it also went into local kitchens, sweetening beans, gingerbread, and things like the cornmeal pudding that New Englanders call Indian pudding. Many, many more. Anyway, next, I'm gonna eat these. Now, waxy spuds, like this 2.5 pounds of red bliss, are great salad fodder because they contain less starch than baking potatoes. Less starch means less swelling inside the cells as they cook. And that means that the pectin-rich plant glue between the cells has less pressure on it. The result will be potatoes that stay firm and sliceable after cooking. You can't do that with a baking potato. Now, I'm just covering these with, half an inch of cold water. I'm gonna put them over high heat to bring almost to a boil. Add some salt, tablespoon. Kosher salt will be enough. We'll be adding more later to the dressing. I'm gonna cover, bring to a boil, and while I wait, I'm going to dice 1 stalk of celery. You notice down at the wide part, I double split it. See, that gives me kind of more uniformity. And then just split in half and cross cut. Next, I need, get through the cutting. Right, there you go, get that. Sorry, just have it. All right, now, the red onion. We only need half a cup, but I usually just go with half of an onion, doing the radio cut here and then the cross cutting into a chop. I like red onion in my potato salad. You don't have to measure. I'm just doing that, to be picky and to catch the ugly cuts, of which there's some. That's all you have to use, but you could use more. Next, we're going to finely mince relatively 3 cloves of garlic. Depending on the strength of the garlic, you could go for 4. This works for me. There we go. Perfect. Well, not perfect, but you get my drift. As soon as the water almost comes to a boil, bubbles just, breaking on the surface, I like to uncover and drop the heat a little bit. I don't want like a big rolling boil. And cook for 15 minutes or until the potatoes reach 200 degrees internal temperature. I am going to use a thermometer and a watch. Next, I require a 1/4 cup of diced Cornichon pickles. It's about 8 pickles. Cornichon, tart French pickle made out of young gherkin cucumbers. A lot of people like a sweet pickle relish in their potato salads. I am not one of them. All done. Then I like a bit of tarragon, up to a tablespoon. If you're kind of sensitive to tarragon, and some people are, you can go less. And I just kind of roughly chop that. That is definitely going to infuse the fat phase, meaning the mayonnaise. It's one of those herbs that can really do that. I'm also going with a 1/4 cup of chopped parsley. This is more about just a little brightness and color. It's not for strong flavor. And you don't really have to measure it. It's just kind of a big wad. Wad should be an official measurement, but it's not. And just kind of pile it up and cross cut it. There you go. You can be rough. Perfect. There you go. More subtle flavor. All right, checking on the potatoes, and 202 degrees after 15 minutes. That's perfect. I don't want them overcooked. Kill the heat and drain. It's going to be a lot of steam, so be careful. Camera lenses don't like steam. Just learning that. I want to peel these right away, and they're kind of hot, and I'm a bit of a weenie hand, so I'm going to give them a dunk in ice water. Get the skins off as soon as you can. I want to slice these while they are still warm inside, and we'll see why. The best way to do this, I think, is to simply wipe off the skins. You can do it with your hands. I find that it's easier with something with a little friction, so I'm just going to use a kitchen towel here. Even paper towels will work. Just wipe it off. And do this quickly because you don't want the potatoes to cool down on the inside. There you go. Now, once you've got those peeled, go ahead and cube them roughly. Again, we'll do this in the rustic fashion. You might still even see steam come off of those. Not a fine cut at all, but we want to do this while they're warm because we need them to soak up some liquid. And if they cool down, they are not going to be as vulnerable to the incursion of liquid. So I'm going to get those into sealed containment. I'm using a zip top bag and adding 3 tablespoons, it's 1.5 ounces of apple cider vinegar. I'm not pickling them, but I am giving them some flavor. Now, believe it or not, before I finish my potato salad, I let these sit. These have been cooked, peeled, and cut. Of course, they've had vinegar added to them. I let them sit in here overnight. You can maybe go as few as 6 hours. I do it overnight. Here's some reasons why. One, while they're still in this warm condition, they will soak up some of that vinegar, which is going to nicely season, deeper into the potato. Number 2, we've cooked them. Now I kind of want the pectin to come back together a little bit, so that they'll be a little firmer when we mix them together with the dressing and the rest of the vegetation. If we did that right now, they would just fall apart. And the final reason that I do this is because it's what my grandmother did. Yeah. So, yes, my grandmother did indeed give her freshly cooked spud hunks of vinegar dip. But I have to admit, I don't really know where she got the move. Though I do have here her 1910 edition of the Boston Cooking School Cookbook, which contains a recipe for Russian salad that calls for cooked potatoes to be dressed with a simple vinaigrette before being finished with mayonnaise. I also know that this recipe may very well have been influenced by an earlier one by the editor of the Boston Cooking School magazine, Janet McKenzie Mill, who in her 1899 blockbuster Salad, Sandwiches, and Chafing Dish Dainties, I love that, wrote the first recipe that I'm aware of for a potato salad with mayonnaise, which also calls for letting the freshly cooked potatoes, where's it? Okay, yeah, here it is. Stand for several hours in a vinegar French dressing. So, there it is, before being finished with mayonnaise. I've got no reason to suggest my grandmother owned this particular tome, but I smell connection here. I just can't quite find it. What I do know is that it works because the cooked potato pieces are quite receptive to liquid absorption, or prone to liquid absorption right after, but not before cooking. So I'm sticking with it because it works. All right, time to finish the dressing. There's our vegetation and herbage. Going to add half a teaspoon each of kosher salt and freshly ground black pepper, a teaspoon of dried mustard powder, and 3/4 of a cup of mayonnaise. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. You could go a full cup of mayonnaise. Nobody would blame you. Free country, but I would suggest that you wait and add that later on if you decide that it's necessary. Also, will give you an opportunity to do some final seasoning. Grab the potatoes and bring them to the party. You'll notice there's no sign of any moisture. That's because all that vinegar got sucked up by the warm potatoes. Now, when you mix this up, try not to stir aggressively. Fold with a spatula. That'll help the potatoes to stay together. They're firm, but there's no reason to push them around. That looks good. I think a few hours in the refrigerator definitely helps to pull the room together, if you get my drift. Oh, and you like my service vessels. I always think that if you're going to take something to a party, a picnic, whatever it is, the better the service piece, the better the food is going to taste. It's almost universally true. These are vintage pieces that actually used to come as storage sets with General Electric refrigerators, like back in the 40s. Anyway, I'm using 2 of them because one of them is for the party that I'm going to, and then the other one is for the party I'm going to have when I get home from the other party. Truly American. A New World plant taken by the Spanish to the Old World, cultivated by Scotch, Irish, Germans, Poles, and returned to the New World, where it finally met up with one of the great manufactured mother sauces of the age, mayonnaise. Well, there you have it. Staffed with such stalwart sides, you will be welcome in any backyard grillis domesticus in the country. Or you could just stay home and relish in your fully developed and well-rounded side game. See you next time.